The worst fate has befallen a party member, and now that character is dead. Was it a bad decision that led to this outcome, or maybe a series of unfortunate dice rolls? Regardless of how their death came to be, that doesn't stop the character from being dead. Where does the story go from here? How do you, as a game master, give an appropriate send-off? We'll be answering these questions and giving advice on how to handle death in your games tonight on Playing God. I am, of course, Nick Logie, and with me as always is Xander Heyman Nolan.
Hey, man.
A PC death can mean everything or nothing, depending on the game being played, and if it is possible to even resurrect the character. So let's start with a simple question. How lethal should your campaign be? This should be thought out and discussed before you ever start your campaign. That's because it sets the expectation with you and your players going into character creation and the role-playing mindset on how to approach dangerous situations. If they know they can die at any time, they'll be more cautious. But if the game isn't meant to be a gritty survival game, the table can lean into more extravagant action and narration, without having to dread any mistake being potentially fatal. Personally, my games always sit on a middle ground. Death is something that can always happen, but it isn't going to happen for no reason. Xander, what do you think about this? What helps you figure out how lethal your game should be?
The lethality of my games comes to a certain point during the planning process, and I decide early on each of my individual campaigns, whether they have different players, different play style, or whatever the setting is going to be dictating in my mind should determine how lethal a campaign should typically be. But once it's set, it's fairly well set in stone, and it will be that lethal from the beginning to the end.
You bring up
It's not
two
a
good
ramping up.
points. The first is the consistency. I know I've played in many games where the consistency was way off. It was like sometimes you could do what Kenton would do in any kind of game and run on walls, jump off shit, punch people in the face. And then later on, maybe 2 games later, it's like I make a decision and then the rocks fall and I die. What? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate things that takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. I'm still working on the lethality of campaigns myself, as my last campaign, which has recently ended, uh, it it became a bit of a problem, making it seem more lethal. I set the game in the campaign where an NPC that was going with my player characters to their first real mission was killed, and I wanted to set a tone that this could be a very lethal game. And from that point in time on, there were moments in time where they could have gotten hurt, but I think it was a combination of I have good role players that are typically careful when it comes to how they interact with situations, and then wanting to tell different stories as the time went along, and the planning process wasn't exactly foolproof. So the lethality kind of changed. It's a thing you have to really be mindful of as a GM, and it's something that you have to be consistently pressing yourself to keep hold of. It's
Right.
like your pacing or anything else.
Consistency is key. But when it comes to like level-based games like D&D, you'll notice, as along with any GM that you ever ask, that the lethality of a game in general goes down naturally just based on how powerful the characters are, how much HP they have. You're not going to ever go into a fight at level 15 against, how about 30 goblins and be like, I think they could beat us in a straight fight at least. Now, if your GM is crafty and they have these 30 goblins that have set up traps and did other crazy setup related stuff in the background while the heroes were approaching them, then
Could
maybe
be.
the bets are off. But in a straight fight out in an open field or something like that, level 15 characters aren't going to care.
Yeah. And that's one of the issues that I take with level based games. is that as you progress in power and ability, the it kind of peters off just a little bit. Now, if you're a skilled GM and you take a lot of time to really analyze what you're doing, you can mitigate for those kinds of things,
Well,
but
yeah,
it's not intuitive.
even the Game Master guide has uh, references for how like lethal a certain challenge rating monster or series of monsters is versus a party of typical adventurers. Actually, I think
Yeah.
it even breaks it down like if you only have like anywhere between like one to however many players. I think it does that.
I'll have to look that up. Um, the flip side of that coin is non-level progression-based games that are all experience, or in Shadowrun's case, um, it's pretty much money. Like karma is good and it does help, but
Well, hold
it's
on.
all
No,
about the Nuyen.
well, karma it depends on what kind of character you're playing. With
Well,
character
that's
advancement
true.
of Shadowrun, a street samurai is Nuyen because he could buy new parts and get awesome. But
Yeah.
a mystic or mystic adept, he's not going to be using that Nuyen to purchase augs. He's going to be using the karma to increase his magical powers and shit.
Yeah.
Bazam!
But I've noticed that with those types of games, the lethality is ever present from the beginning, and it doesn't peter off as time goes along. Even really powerful characters from, let's say, World of Darkness, Mage, we still had a lot of trouble dealing with the potential for character death because things can get really crazy really fast because you're dealing with mages. So I think it depends partly on the system, partly on how you deal with it as a GM. It kind of goes both ways.
Well, one of
As
the things that I've noticed as a problem with the level-based games, since you brought it up, is even some really strong stuff, even if it says it should be lethal in the chart in the GM handbook, it isn't. Let's take, for example, that time when you guys were what, level 7 or 8? Or
yeah,
four of
level
you,
7.
well, 5 if you count the NPC, Daikatana, which I do. Or what, was
Okay.
Grizz still around for that? No, that was Daikatana,
Uh,
right?
it was Daikatana.
Right. Uh,
Yeah.
that beholder that you fought with its lair was CR15. According to the book, that should have almost guaranteed to kill one of you. Instead, you basically KO'd it with a perfect. I don't think any of you even had the threat of death.
No. In
Except for
fact,
Marissa's character who got petrified, but that was easily resolved at that point.
yeah. I think it was. I think it came down to the abilities of the characters can dictate the severity of a combat, because had Jesse's character, Red Silver, not cast uh oh, what was it? It was a spell that outlines him in light. I can't remember the name of it
I
for the
thought
life
it's
of me.
it's fairy fire, but I thought that
Fairy Fire,
failed.
that's it. No, it succeeded. That's
Oh.
the reason why we killed it so fast, is
Well,
because
I mean, also the player
yeah,
skill was really good. You guys' descriptions and being able to handle the situation worked really well.
yeah.
But let's take another example that should have been a quadruple deadly encounter for you, and that was your showdown with Awanok the second time.
Oh yeah,
According to that chart, that should have been nearly a party wipe. But
yeah,
even the mitigating factor that I had in order to kind of balance you to fight the Baylor at level 11, I think, or 10,
yeah,
uh, ended up really not being needed. You guys kind of had it even without the extra help. And that's a
yeah.
CR21 monster. Come on.
Yeah. And then on top of that, it wasn't just the Baylor, it was also Nega
Nega
Kenton
Kenton.
as well.
It should, yeah,
So,
somebody should have
yeah.
died and nobody did. That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's very high intensity game.
my point overall with both these examples is that at the very beginning of the game, when you're hunting the Odiug, I established pretty early on that you could fucking die even without actually killing anyone. Someone
I
got
think it
eaten,
was, yeah, it was
and it was
Curiel.
Kiriel. She got eaten, and each turn it was doing a crap load of damage to her to the point where she went unconscious and had to start doing death saves. I was fully prepared to kill a character if it came to that. I don't
Yeah.
I don't recommend any GM unless you are specifically running a dungeon crawly game that's supposed to one side, whether it's the players or the GM, is supposed to kind of win. In just a regular old narrative game, I wouldn't ever recommend a GM specifically set out to kill somebody.
Yeah. No, to keep things good and fun around the table or online or wherever, it should never be the GM versus the players. Now, keep this in mind, for those of you listening. You will have moments where you feel that way as a GM. It's part of
Wait, that
it's
you want
part
to
of
kill?
dealing with it.
Wait, that you want to kill somebody or what?
It at least for me, I know that I have feelings where I'm like, man, my monster's not doing crap, and
Oh,
it like
yeah, that's
frustrates me, and
yeah, that
it
does
will.
happen to everybody.
But try to take it in stride and be aware of it and be mindful of it. And it's okay to make mistakes, but just try to learn from them. Try to make your next campaign better. That's what I'm working on right
So
now, is
I
trying to make
actually
my next
have a
campaign
technique
better.
for to try to mitigate that, and you, Xander, might actually be able to use this.
Oh,
Whenever I feel like my monster isn't doing well enough, like, well, Awanok did great. Let's be honest, he was great. But let's say something more like the Beholder or uh, even some of the more recent fights. Now that you're in the Underdark, some of those seemed underwhelming to me in some cases. But if you imagine you're playing the game and you have a character on the field, how satisfying is it when you go into a fight and there's like this huge hulking monster who's like, I'm gonna kill your entire party, and you're like, fuck you, and give them the middle finger, and then proceed to kick their ass 6 ways to Sunday.
that is a pretty good feeling, I must say.
So even if
Yeah,
you as the GM feel like you are kind of losing, so to speak, your players feel like they're winning in an epic way, and that's
yeah,
awesome
that is awesome. Like,
because then you get an epic story out of it, and you could
yeah,
feel good just like the players feel good.
we actually took on and defeated a purple worm, which was like the first time we came across this actual purple worm, we ran from it because it was going to eat us and it was going to win, and there was nothing that we were going to do. I think it's like what, 3 levels later,
Oh no,
two or
hold on. It
three.
was yeah, it is like a few levels later. I designed that
Yeah,
first encounter because my intent was for you guys to run. I didn't
yeah,
think you were gonna win. Who knows though, because you might have. But
yeah.
since I figured you guys were gonna run from that, I kind of factored that in. And then when Meepo used the silvering liquid to like basically distinguish the purple worm, I had to have him return.
Oh yeah,
And I was
that's
actually looking at the
that's great.
map when I overlaid the Underdark map onto the Golden Desert map. You
Uh-huh.
guys were basically in the right place for to
Oh
encounter
wow,
it
really?
again. Yeah. So
That's
I was
awesome.
like, screw it, let's have the same one show up. It makes sense.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
I
fun.
could see that. Yeah. Now, when dealing with the lethality of a game, you've also got to take into account that your characters are going to come up, your players rather, are going to come up with some creative means by which to dispatch your content, and that's okay. That is perfectly fine.
Especially who
Uh,
you play with. I know
oh
you
yeah,
know this from experience, but anytime you get like actual army people or marines in a game, they try to win the fight before it starts.
yeah. I think that was like the fact that Kenton had basically set up entire, like, dictated and in mic and like macro managed an entire country's army to win against a demon horde that would just keep coming, and we actually won, and that was really great and kind of satisfying, not only for me but also for Kenton. So that
Right.
was really cool. So yeah,
I wasn't
yeah,
talking
but
about
try
arm
to win
like
the fight first.
I wasn't talking about in play armies. I was talking about real life
Out of play,
army.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
U.S.
I
Army.
gained those tactic skills when I was active duty in the army. So
Right, and I've seen you use those. Okay, now I get what you're saying now. Okay. It
Yeah,
all makes sense now. I kind of got lost there for a second.
yeah. So, newsflash, guys, I was in the army.
One important thing about keeping it consistent is if you are going to make a lethal game, commit to that. Make sure that if the dice fall as they may and it happens to kill somebody, you don't need to softball it. There's enough stuff to either mitigate death
Hmm.
entirely or allow them to come back from the grave. Like with the death saving throws, there's a good chance that unless they really messed up, somebody who goes down is probably not going to die.
Yeah.
And if you have any
Now,
kind of magical healing, that's just like, all right, you're up.
no,
Go
it's
get
like
them.
you're back up, dude. Stand up. Quit being a little pansy. Uh, but in that vein of consistency and letting the dice fall where they may, I know that in one of our earliest episodes on this podcast, Jesse had said that he rolls all of his dice right out in the open so that everyone knows what they are, even his GM rolls, and he doesn't hide them. And that's both to the benefit of the players understanding what's going to happen, and also the kind of being able to step back and not fudge things to try and alter the game and let the dice fall how they may. That is an excellent means by which to create a lethal game. Uh, it keeps more of the tension on the die rather than on you. So that
That's
is
true.
an option by which to take as well.
But with you can actually just go the opposite direction too. You I wouldn't say fudge dice rolls so much because that gets kind of a really gray area where people are like, I'm not sure if the GM's actually calling it as he's seeing it. But if you're not gonna have a lethal game, then you can have it so that maybe people don't die as much, even if maybe they should, or maybe it's easier to come back to life if you've died. I use this example every like all the time, I guess, but let's go back and talk about Dragon Ball Z because I love Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball Z is good.
Nobody gives a good goddamn if anyone dies anymore because it's just like let's fly around the world. It takes like 8 minutes. Get the Dragon Balls. I wish them back to life. All right, boom, done. You're back.
Hey, welcome back.
But like
So
that show's still exciting and can still create tension even without having the like a massive like hardcore lethality. So when you decide on that, just stick with it and go to the lands far off into the distance and beyond towards the sunset or whatever. But let's say that somebody does die. No, either way, you got a non-lethal game, somebody still managed to die. You got a lethal game, somebody dies. What do when you as a GM you roll those dice, you roll the 8d6 because you shot somebody with a lightning bolt, and it all comes up sixes, and you're looking at it like, oh well.
that sucks.
Let's talk about narrating this death scene.
Oh yes.
Here is something that has happened to me in games and happened to a lot of people I know that is not fun. And it's not the dying itself that isn't fun. It's the you have just been hit with whatever all sixes of d8s. Wait, that's 48 damage, isn't it? Is that the maximum damage?
I think I am bad at the
Woo!
math.
I'm gonna do can't do simple math on the podcast. But you die. The worst thing you could do as a GM is go, oh, you're dead, and then go to the next turn. That will suck the fun out of dying. Dying while having fun.
Yeah, that's that is an interesting thing to state.
Well, so okay, I've had characters die. You've had characters die. I've killed
Oh
some
yeah,
of your characters,
you
and
have.
I killed Ken twice actually.
You killed Kitten twice and sort of killed uh eight way. You
I killed
sort of killed
Slick.
eight ways.
I straight up killed Slick though.
Oh yeah, you blew him
He
up with a
he
freaking
he didn't
missile.
come back. I've also killed
No.
Jess's characters before too. Uh, but whenever I presented that death, even the death where it was you did instantly die when you badmouthed Pharaoh Drex and he used power word kill on you.
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't just be like you die, you hit the ground. the way that you present the death, you got to make it feel like it means something.
Mm.
Uh, so talk about the way the um, like what the party sees as they turn and see that like this lightning bolt we mentioned earlier like pass through the chest of the character, like their eyes get wide, you could see there's like a scorch mark that's spreading out from the middle of their chest and like burning a hole directly through them. Basically you're impaling them with energy. Like talk about maybe how their hair might stand on end for electricity stuff, and then mention how you can like just see the life being drained from their eyes, like the pupils dilate. Um, Even as they hit the ground, like dust kicks up. Uh, the room is silent after the party witnesses the death of a friend. Maybe have the villain cackle afterwards to redouble the hatred that the players already feel for that villain. Make it cool.
Make it memorable, worthwhile.
Pop quiz. Can you describe to me how Grizz died?
The first time or the second time?
He didn't die the second time. He didn't die. Okay, hold on. He only died once. He was
Well, technically,
critical.
he died
He
twice.
was critical the other time.
Well, Kenton let him pass on, so like he was already dead, but didn't
You
die.
gave him his last rites and he was still alive. He had two death saving throws. Like he was really close.
Yeah,
But his actual death when Porter betrayed the party.
yeah. Oh man,
You remember how that went? It was
I
a
have the
very long
worst.
time ago. If you can't remember,
Yeah, I have the worst of memories. Like I remember the first time because he was like, we were fighting a Minotaur and Kenton literally beat this Minotaur to death with his bare hands
fuck it. We'll
because it
use
was
the
just
Minotaur
mad.
example because obviously you remember that one more than the epic lava fight. When I described him quote unquote dying, he was nearly cut in half by the Minotaur's axe.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Do you remember?
Uh, After that, it
Other than you
was
beating the ever loving bejesus out of him.
you narrated the moment that he'd passed the axe slicing through the air, blood splattering uh, back away from Grizz and hitting both Kenton and Kirill because Porter was behind us, and the axe slamming into the wall, dripping a little bit of blood onto the floor, and then Kenton's eyes just kind of like went wide, and it was. I think it was then his turn, so he got righteous fury.
There you go. That's exactly what happened. Even though Grizz was just an NPC, he was still a friend of the party.
Oh yeah,
And when I described his death, well, his unconsciousness that was probably going to end in death if nobody got to him, and somebody did manage to get to him at the very last second, is what happened. But I described the blade
yeah.
passing
Whew.
through. It was basically, if you can describe it in maybe like a slow motion scene, then
Yeah.
that really brings out the fine details of everything that goes on. And if you need to come up with something cool, like if you know how they died, like if uh maybe this like a minotaur comes up and like chops the head off of a your barbarian, for example, then if you need to take a second to just be because like the dice just say, all right, he hit him, he dies, but the way you describe it is like talk about it in slow motion, like everybody sees the axe passing through the head, and then but there's since I play games like an anime, there's that moment where his head doesn't instantly fall off. He like falls to his knees. As he slumps over, the head rolls off and looks at you with dead eyes.
Oh,
Yes, there you go. See, just like that.
Jesus.
You could even add
Now I'm
more
gonna
shit.
remember that for another year and a half.
Hehehe.
Um, the narration of a character death is one of the most heart wrenching jobs of a GM because in that moment, a person, a real human being, is sitting on the other side of the table or on the other side of the mic, and they've put a lot of work into creating this character, fleshing them out into a real person, and they've bonded with people in their game, and they've made connections and they've made friends,
Especially if
as
they've played
NPCs.
from level 1 to level whatever.
Oh yeah, like if Kenton were to die, Xander
For
would be
realsies.
devastated
Oh no, I
because
know that.
yeah,
I heard what Bobby said when I killed you with the power word kill. That you stood up and you were like went into the kitchen and
yeah,
started
I had
pacing
to
or
get up.
whatever.
Yeah, I had to get up and leave the room, because it's really a powerful moment. Um, and taking that moment and giving it some weight and a bit of flavor as a GM, um, it's going to be hard because you've been there with these characters from the beginning, since the time they stepped into your game. You've been watching them grow, and you've been watching them level up, and you've been watching them form all of these bonds. You're just as attached to your players' characters, as you are to your NPCs, and as your players are to your NPCs and their characters as well. So giving them a good narration for that moment, it sucks. It really does.
Hmm.
But it's really important. And glossing over it and making it feel like it's not important would be doing a disservice to your game. And in that moment, you could take an amazing campaign that's seen 15 levels and it's absolutely fantastic, and your players rave about it constantly, and ruin it completely, like to the point where players not going to want to come back to the table.
Hmm.
So these moments are the ones that really count. Uh,
Which is also why I don't deride people for having like not very lethal games. Because like if this isn't something that you're interested in doing, you don't have to make the game lethal.
yeah, uh, it is a it is a really hard thing, to deal with as a GM. Now, in that moment, uh, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. Uh, you can have a generalized thing prepared for what happens to the character. Now, this is where we're moving away from that moment, because you can describe the death hit in great detail, but what do you do
Talking about
after that?
the aftermath.
That is still part of the death scene, and how it affects, both the player as they're going to be dealing with this character's death. Um, yeah, sure, the killing blow is really cool to kind of narrate and everything, but you got to give them something after that. They don't just drop.
Yeah, I mean that's
So
exactly what I was like kind of getting at. Like, and with what you were saying with making it have the weight, when I killed Slick with the
yeah,
giant mech, when I rolled those dice and saw the amount of successes that the mech got against you, I knew it was over because the damage on one of those missiles was pretty bad, but like four of them were just like that's why you actually got pasted.
yep, splattered.
Yeah, but that hurt to narrate, but it did make a cool story,
It really did.
and that
Um,
affected Jesse's character for the remainder of the campaign.
yeah, because Jesse's character,
Double
AJ
Jack.
Double Jack, was like best friends. Like they were like bros to the max, and he just gets splattered right in front of him. And so that goes back to something that I had mentioned a few minutes ago, righteous fury. Which Nick, this is your thing.
All right, so you kind of threw in the term. Let's go over it. So when Slick died, the actual aftermath of the what happened after the battle was Double Jack took his katana and after he hijacked one of the mechs, then he always had it with him as a reminder of of Slick. But immediately after Slick's death, still during rounds, and this is something that I put into every game. It's a made up rule. It's totally a house rule. The term I ripped from Warhammer 40,000. or Dark Heresy specifically, I think. It's Righteous Fury. What I do with that, and this is to maybe ease the death a little bit after the big narration and to get people back into the combat more or less, is give whoever it is who is the closest in play to that character. So when Slick died, it was Double Jack. When Daikatana died, it was the Barbarian Karks. When it was whoever
When
died,
Grizz died, it was Kenton.
yeah, when Grizz died, it was Ken. Righteous Fury is giving the player and their character who's closest in play to whoever just died something awesome, something that turns the tide of battle in the favor of the party. Not so much so that they just automatically win, but good enough that it seems like there's some like epic kind of magical thing at play, even if there wouldn't normally be magic in the setting. With the most recent one, I gave Karks the Barbarian. What did he have? He had advantage on all of his attack rolls. Actually, all
Hmm.
rolls. I just gave him advantage on every roll. It doesn't guarantee that he succeeds on anything, but it does get close to it.
Uh, he gained the ability to use action surge once.
Yep, because Daikatana was a fighter, something I also incorporate is what could the character who died, something they can do, whether it's a class feature or if it's just something that they normally would do in play. How could you apply that to a character that normally wouldn't have it? Give it to them for like a few turns. For me, I always set Righteous Fury to last 3 turns, give or take, depending on what exactly like narratively I kind of want to happen. But
Hmm.
usually 3 turns is a good balance. It's enough that you get a lot of use out of it, but it's not so much that you've suddenly started relying on it or that it auto wins the combat.
Yeah.
When Slick died and Doublejack was up on the roof and saw that happen, he normally didn't have heavy weapons as a skill. He did for that. He did
Oh
as he
yeah.
picked up that full big ass machine gun, mounted that right on the side of the roof, and unloaded. He also did additional damage. Like you could flavor it however you want. You can mechanically change whatever it needs to be, and you don't even have to call it Righteous Fury. You can call it uh, anything. Doesn't matter. You come
Yeah,
up with
whatever you
something.
want.
You're the creative GM. You do it.
Yeah. Now, Righteous Fury. In this case, uh, I don't typically add that to any of my games. That is less. I think I'm not. I don't typically run really high energy anime style games. I do sometimes, but it's been a while since I have. But those kinds of mechanics really give the rest of the party something to look at when it comes to a player's death, and it makes it memorable for the character because not only did Daikatana fall in combat, you know, but Karks basically walked up to the thing that killed him and just smushed it,
Yeah, he
and it
basically
was
just straight up cut that mind flayer in half.
and it was like it was that satisfactory like that satisfaction that I'm sure like I felt it and I wasn't the character that got it. So the feeling that he must have had the player dealing with that character's death, uh it's that moment of like a little bit of vengeance, just a touch, like some salt on the food. It's not gonna don't over salt,
Well,
but
the way I
yeah,
design it, it's a bittersweet thing. Like, you get this cool, awesome thing, but somebody had to die for somebody to get it.
yeah, it's so take that into consideration when you're making your campaigns, and if you want to add it in, that's great. But it's one of the many ways that you can make a death epic and
I'll
make
mostly
the
put it
death
in on
epic.
I'll mostly put it in on any game, except if I'm trying to elicit a certain atmosphere. Like, I probably wouldn't do this in a World of Darkness game,
I don't think it would really fit the setting of World of Darkness. You know?
but for games that already have like um, a very obvious like magic that's in the universe or is supposed to be like 80s over the top, whatever, then I go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that's a good place. A good place to take it. Now, now that the character has died and their
Character's
best
dead.
friend has
We've won
gotten
the
great
battle.
fury, what do you do with the character as a description for passing from this life onto the next? How do you handle that?
The first thing I do is even if the afterlife scene, so to speak, doesn't even involve the other characters, like they can't see this, I'll still describe it as if they can, because that is going to give closure to the death of this character. Now, if I have like a prototypical heaven-like scene, then I'll have the rolling hills of clouds. I'll have the shining figure that you may or may not see their face, depends. Uh, Tell them like maybe they did a good job or that they upheld the lawfulness of their religion, or something to kind of give it a little bit more of a feel-good moment. Or
Hmm.
maybe if you're an evil guy and you are like, woohoo, going to hell, then the maybe a demon lord is the one who brings you into their fold. Maybe even makes you like a general or something like high standing because this demon lord looks at you and he's like, I saw what you did on the surface. Good job, bro. Gives you the thumbs up and everything. And it's like, welcome to a fun afterlife.
You're gonna get to kill all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, like classic, even in real mythology, is like an endless battlefield. If you got somebody who is just like fighting is what they like to do, then if you have an afterlife that reflects that, like in Legends of Latyr, Skoll, the
Yeah,
orcish god of warfare, at and some other things, uh, he has one of these eternal battlefield kind of things going on, and you could like fight as much as you want, drink and be merry, at the base camp or wherever it is, and then just go back out and kick some more ass until you are satisfied for all of eternity. How do you handle it?
well, usually I do the same kind of thing. I try my best to hold in keeping with the pantheon that I've created for the game, but that's a whole other podcast, I think. So, a character death that had actually happened in my last campaign, the Dragonborn fighter, had been killed by a rather large group of thugs. I don't know if I've covered this before, but
Yeah, you told the story.
yeah, he got murked. And when he died, the description that I gave of his passing was he can look down and he sees his friends kind of over the top of his body. He sees himself lying there, and he's being pulled away. Like his vision is getting wider, and as he looks around, the the area goes dark, and he sees uh, three figures on the other side of what looks to be like kind of a bit of a shadowy kind of veil. One of which a dragon asks him if he wants to go back because his friends are trying to bring him back, and he says no, and he actually had passed on. But in that moment, I like to narrate what would occur. Now, uh, following that, the player characters actually had an entire session where they had set up an actual funeral for the character and everything, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
how they
PCs
process
are
it.
pretty much always gonna have a cool funeral scene afterwards, and you really don't have to do much with it other than
Yeah.
narrate the necessary parts that they leave open.
But it is personalize it to the character as much as you can. Um, and keep in mind for the pantheon that you have or the god set that you have, it makes it a lot easier. But falling back on the tropes is it's acceptable for these situations because it's what they're probably going to expect. So uh, I usually tend
I mean,
to.
you don't really want something super intense right after somebody just died. Like
And not all the time.
it's fine. Yeah, not all the time. It's fine if you dial it back a little bit. It doesn't I mean, most people are gonna take the role play seriously already, so
Hmm.
you don't really have to you don't really have to plan too much on anyone's death. Uh, Other than the poor GMs that I've seen that are just like you die next turn. Usually, even if you don't plan a single thing other than you have an idea of what the afterlife is like, then you can wing it. You can make it up on the spot, and I usually don't see anybody having trouble with that when they're invested in the game.
Yeah. Um, it's a lot easier uh, than you might think to come up with that kind of moment. Uh, it's gonna be hard, no lie, but just hold your intuition with you and kind of kind of fall back on the tropes and try to create a release of that
Yeah,
tension
yeah,
and
it's
that
a
feel
release
good
of
moment.
tension and a closure of the character. I basically try to, I guess, kind of appeal to three quote unquote groups of people. The first is the player and the character who died because it's their character. They want to see how this turns out. The second group is the PCs, the actual characters in play, and the third group are the players themselves because they're the ones with the real emotions that are going on, and
Hmm.
it's important that even if the PCs don't see like the afterlife scene, that's why I included that, then it brings closure to the real life people who uh, have to deal with it.
Hmm. And during a player death, there's going to be uh, some feels and be prepared to deal with that. And if you, as the GM or any of the players, have to take 5-10 minutes to step back from
Yeah,
that moment,
take a break
totally
after
do that.
that is all done.
I know that when Kenton got Power Word killed in the desert, I got up from my computer and walked out of the room and was just pacing back and forth trying to kind of nail down the feelings that were washing over me. And it a little bit more difficult was that I wasn't around a table with a bunch of people. I was just on Skype online because we play in Roll 20 for Legends of Latier.
And the roll
So
20 invoice thing sucks.
oh yeah, uh, great program, great website, totally use it, but use Skype for your voice. It's just easier.
Or something else like Discord or something. Not everybody likes Skype.
Yeah,
Uh, but
but
now that you've taken the
yeah.
break, now that we've calmed down, we know that the character is permadead. We're getting back into the game. Maybe it's the end of the session already, or maybe you have a little more to go. But now it's time to think about what the hell are you gonna do with all those loose ends that just got created in your story? Personal plot
That
immediately is just like, uh oh,
that's
chuck it out the
gone.
window. Um,
Yeah.
so what you could do with personal plot, if it's something that even if it was personal, specific to a character, and the party's still invested in it, then maybe find a way to tailor that personal plot to kind of become a more meaningful or bigger deal. Uh, like with Legends of Latir, the dragon crystals.
Mm,
Um, when uh, when Marissa left the game, that was straight up just like a this important thing is just kind of sitting here. What can I do with that? And I'm not going to go into details because there's still lots of spoilers with that. But I repurposed it. I repersonalized the plot to work really well with another character that was going to be coming in. I didn't copy paste. That's important that you don't just rehash what you already have. You got to rewrite it because it needs to be important for whoever you give that to, whether it's one player or all of them.
mm.
The next thing, well, actually, hold on. I might be going a little too fast. Xander, what do you do with personal plots specifically?
Well, if there are open loose ends for personal plot, uh, a really good example is that the player character who had died, the Dragonborn, he had a fiance that he had met in play, and they started up a relationship. It was kind of uh, a whirlwind romance.
Oh,
Uh,
snap.
yeah, Nick knows exactly how that came about. Um, when he was carousing, and it just kind of stuck, and so we kept with it. The character wrote quite a few letters to the character, the NPC, effectively to me, um, and there were some responses and yada da da. But letting that player character find out about, letting that NPC find out about the player's death, and then confronting the other characters, the other PCs, for not telling her, because they actively went away from it and went against it. Uh, and that was just a dynamic of the party and a dynamic of the moment and everything. But it sort of uh, kind of harkened back to that moment,
Oh
and I
yeah,
think that for personal plot, sometimes those loose ends don't necessarily have to be resolved by another player character. Sometimes they can be resolved by the NPCs that were involved. If, let's say, hypothetically, the Dragonborn character had died, the fiance finds out about this via means and change and blah blah blah. However she finds out, and then she takes up adventuring to go look for the other player characters and figure out like what the hell happened, because she's got six different stories about how it occurred, and like she doesn't understand what's going on, so she like takes up adventuring to go and find them. When she finally does, she's heard 12 different stories about how this happened, and she could very well be the means by which another plot hook and plot device begins,
yeah,
i.e., how exactly did you hear 12 different versions of the same character's death?
yeah.
Well,
That
this is the right one. Where did the others come from?
that also
So,
shows
yeah.
good uh, um, opportunity to have like a social conflict in the game,
Hmm.
or even depending on how bitter this lady is, present a new villain entirely. Maybe
Oh, yeah.
that was the tipping point to bring her over to the dark side. A
Yeah,
tale of revenge.
that is that is that is such an incredible trope, but it is an incredibly, like,
It
no
works.
matter no matter how
Tropes
many
work.
times tropes work, no matter how many times you play this game, and no matter how many campaigns you run through, no matter how many video games you play, no matter how many movies you watch, when the crossed lover turns out to be the bad guy in the end, it's always a surprise. It's always a really good plot twist. That's Keep that in mind for future games.
Or here's
You
an
know.
idea. Even if it isn't a plot twist, maybe let's say the Dragonborn's wife is really upset and is like has gone maybe insane, and she's just like, he doesn't want to come back to life. I'm gonna make him. I'm gonna learn necromancy, and then like in over the course of this, like she maybe even becomes like some kind of lich or something crazy like that, and the PCs, like maybe in another country or whatever at this point, are like, uh-oh, we should do something about that. And then maybe instead of like ending the that plot in a direct like fight or confrontation, maybe they're working to like free her addled mind
Hmm.
or like trek their way back into like let's say her lich keep at the top of a hill, and they're like, we know this is really fucked up. It's like you've sent out like a skeleton army to try to find the remains of your husband. Here are his last wishes. And then like maybe instead of a fight, you have like persuasion rolls, or
Hmm.
maybe even without rolls, just a whole role play thing. Like sky's the limit.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you can take a character's death to add to your game, and it does a couple of things in that moment. One, if you've got a ton of personal plot that you have to resolve now suddenly for no reason, well, crap. Now that all that content, nah, repurpose it, keep it for a later date, use it for another character. There's other ways to work it in, but it gives you a whole new opportunity to make that character who is completely gone still relevant and impactful to the story, and let
It's
the other players and their new character feel like the character had made a difference, even if it's not a good one,
yeah,
but they still made a difference, and
it's
that's really
the
important.
it's the gone but not forgotten.
Yeah.
And if you're playing big damn heroes and you have ventured from city to city, country to country, kingdom to kingdom, and like this dead character has made a huge impact on the way, how does the world react to this? When Saint Edward, well, Sir Edward at the time, died in Legends of Latir, he got a sainthood. He was frozen by magical ice, but he was still dead. So that he became a holy ground. They erected a chapel around him. He became more of a an iconic statue that people of the faith came and like worshipped at his feet, or prayed to the gods or whatever. Um, and this news was felt throughout all the land.
Hmm.
And it does, and even if it isn't like all the land, then what does it do to the like the city the character's from? Like when the messenger arrives and uh, makes a big statement in the town square, declaring this character's passing. How does that affect like maybe the family? We all know that nobody in D&D has a family. It's all orphans, orphans all the way.
Orphaned
We're all
murder hobos.
Batman. All right, but
Yeah.
not the family then. How about the wandering colleagues? We'll say. How does the wizard in the tower, like who normally nobody would ever see, maybe he takes a trip down, and is like seen for the first time in like 100 years because uh, the character was important to this wizard.
I.e. Wardell.
Yeah, sort of. He wasn't seen that infrequently, but uh, that was more of just a generic example.
Yeah.
Um, or maybe if this character saved the city at some point, like from a big ass threat, maybe there's a holiday, like a day out of the year, where it's like the feast of Saint who's a what's it, and that's also something you could bring up later on in the game, like when the player characters come back to the city after their long pilgrimage. Like we'll say that this is like beginner haven, the town of many taverns, and they come back and it's like the day of the feast. It's like, what's all this going on here? So it's something that they get reminded of, and it's something that they can participate in actively as characters and celebrate the life of their friend.
Hmm. And it, that that letting the world be impacted by the character in that respect. Could be on a small scale, like Kenton. I know I use him as a lot of examples
He did die
because
twice,
he's
and
died twice,
almost many other times.
and almost several hundred others. Um, but when he saved a portion of his hometown of Elrin, basically from a plague that had actually killed his parents, he was honored, and the rest of the characters were honored with a feast, and he was given gold pants.
Hmm.
So if Kenton were to die,
To anybody who didn't play that game, just suddenly saying I got gold pants like doesn't even begin to make sense.
yeah, it's like what? Like Meepo jacked the leg of it to make a cape or a cloak. It was a
I need
cloak.
to give you more pants is what needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, I'll
When you go back to Elrin,
when we go back
then
to Elrin, I'll get
they'll
some
have
more.
that guy
He's
make you
actually gonna
pants.
go and get more because he kind of misses him. Um, but if he had died 2 games after that, he might not be. Well, Kenton would be forever mourned by a lot of people because he was rather
Yeah, I
famous
mean,
starting out the gate.
yeah, but with the bigger picture kind of thing, it would be more of like a political mourning. Like
Yeah.
you see maybe like a famous actor in real life that has passed away, and
It's like, oh, that
you're
sucks,
like
man.
that really sucks, but I didn't know him personally, so it's like you could sympathize with the people he's close with, but you can't really feel it all yourself.
Yeah. Whereas if Kenton were to die now, like
That would be very more noticeable.
the
But if you had died like the 2 games later from the acquiring of the pants, then that that poor part of town, they they would have felt it.
oh yeah, they would have been sad as fuck. They were like, man, I just gave him pants too. Now it's more like the king of all the dwarves would drink for 6 weeks because his homie died.
Hold on,
Uh,
drink more for six
okay,
weeks.
more drink more. But the effects of Kenton's death would be astronomically huge. But
Well, at this point, pretty
that
much any of the deaths of the party
oh yeah,
would be
would
felt
be
far and
huge.
wide. Maybe not everywhere, but in enough places that it would really mean something if any other
Yeah.
characters uh, went there later.
But one of the things that really holds true in this aspect, and this is something that is really hard to kind of grasp as a GM, when you put all of your eggs in one basket and you let the player characters dictate the plot, which as a GM you're gonna have to do sometimes. You're gonna have to let them take the ball and run with it. That that influences your overarching plot a lot. And when a pivotal character to that plot dies, it's not personal plot. This is like the big picture kind of thing. Like if Kenton were to die, yeah, they'd probably still go after Pharodrex, but that was technically Kenton's original mission. Like the reason they're going after it is because Kenton has been tracking him down, which is both good and bad. It's got some uh, it's gotten to a point where Kenton's starting to question whether or not it's a good idea. That's a whole other ball of wax. But
You have been struggling with that in play, the ideals of what
oh yeah,
Faradrex is doing in play for like 80 games. So we
yeah,
cannot
it's
summarize all of that in 30 seconds. Don't even
it
try.
is it is rough, let me tell you. But anyway, uh, the the looking at that overarching plot, your player characters are probably going to take over, um, and they'll probably do so actively in play. Uh, but looking at that overarching plot and moving it forward can have some other kind of interesting consequences if that linchpin character dies. Suddenly, the game has changed, and that plot uh, may no longer be applicable, but it does give you the opportunity to become more flexible with what you introduce next, and the new character for that player, if they decide to do a new rolling a new character, could have interactions with that. But we'll cover that later.
Well, so
Um,
with an overarching plot, if for example you have more or less kind of a main character, like maybe let's use like the Matrix, like the chosen one kind of examples, where there's one person who's supposed to like deal with this thing. It's prophecy. It's uh, what is someone has seen the future with like a divination magic and knows like 50 years from now a hero will be born that'll do whatever and save the world. But if that hero dies, then you can alter that plot. You could take the whole thing. You don't have to throw it out, but you could posit what happens when the hero fails. So let's say that
ooh.
in the prophecy, you're supposed to stop the. I like liches, so we're gonna go with that. The liches, huge undead army, who this hero is the only one who could like wield like the magic sword or whatever MacGuffin bullshit you got. Um, but this hero dies. Someone else picks up the sword, and it's like, this doesn't have like the radiant magic that is needed to strike down this foe. Maybe do a time skip if it's that important. Like, what happens in 5 years when it's like you go to a town and instead of human guards, you see skeletal guards watching the populace, downtrodden? How do you deal with the world now that it has fallen under darkness?
Hmm.
You could have a whole nother bajillion games based off that.
Oh yeah, that could be the start to a whole new campaign.
That
You
works
know?
really well on a party wipe, actually.
Yeah,
I've never had a party wipe. Well, happen in a game I ran. It has happened to me before.
I have only been in one game where there was a party wipe, and there was a party wipe not because the dice were bad or we made some stupid decisions. He just wasn't a very good GM.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
which
disappointing.
it is disappointing, and it does happen. So if you're gonna GM a game, yeah, you're gonna make some mistakes. It's okay.
what if you
Please
what
learn
if you
from
just
them.
had a really hard like don't suck. It's
Don't
your
suck
fault.
rule. Like, you're gonna make mistakes, but learn from them. There's always room for improvement. There's always room to make yourself better. This guy had told me that he had been DMing games for almost 10 years at that point in time, and when I played, it sucked. And I'm like, and I told him, I'm like, man, that was kind of underwhelming. And he's like, screw you. You don't have to play my games anymore. I'm like, okay,
Oh, woof,
yeah,
that's a really bad reaction.
yeah, it was a really bad reaction, but eh, it happens. So those of you listening, you can do it. You will make mistakes, but learn from them. Try not to make them twice,
Or the hard stance,
please.
never make mistakes, be perfect all the time, 100%.
100% all the time. Now,
Savage. Well, with that, everyone, that concludes part one of our topic about dealing with death. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will return when we rise from our tombs to finish our discussion next time on Playing God.
later, man.
See you then.